Welcome into the very first episode of the High Post podcast. And you may be wondering, what is the High Post? And it's honestly a really good question because I don't even really know what the High Post is at this point. I don't even know if that's what it's going to be called moving forward into the future. So we can figure that part out together. But what I kind of envision this show being is me sitting at my desk for half an hour talking to myself about the NBA because that's kind of what I do in my free time, anyways. What I do know what this show is not going to be, though. This show is not going to be me sitting here at my desk spewing stats and advanced metrics that nobody understands, because that's not fun for me. That's not fun for anybody. Like VORP. What the fuck is VORP? Like, we'll leave that stuff to baseball, and we'll go based on what I see in the games, and I'll report back. I don't really know what I'm going to do with this podcast in the future. I might do some more general stuff. I might do some deep dives into teams or players or situations going around in the league. Maybe I'll sit here and just talk about random players that come to my mind, like Luke Ridnour or John Salmons. Or maybe if I'm really on a roll, I'll talk about how sweet of a left-handed jumper Michael Redd had back in the day for 8 or 9 minutes. It's my show. I can do what I want around here. Anyways, today, what I got planned is I'm late to the party. The NBA season is damn near a quarter of the way through. We're just under 20 games done with the season, which is crazy because it feels like I blinked and now the season's a quarter of the way done. So I'm going to go through my takeaways from the first quarter of the season and just cover some storylines and get us back up to date. And then I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into two teams kind of on different sides of the spectrum. So we'll get into that. And before we start, I just want to, if for whatever reason anybody is watching this, I appreciate it. And this is my first solo pod, so there's going to be some growing pains. So stick with me. We'll get through this together, and I'll get better one show at a time. So with that said, let's get into it. We're late to the party. The NBA is in full swing. So let's get into a recap. We're gonna recap both the East and the West. I don't really want to spend a lot of time on the East, just because the West is a lot more exciting. There's a lot more storylines going on in the West. The East, it's pretty much the Celtics, Sixers, and Bucks run the East. That's no surprise to anybody. The Bucks get Damian Lillard. The Celtics get Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, and Embiid's the former MVP. That's no surprise to anybody. There's one surprise in the East that I will touch on is the Orlando Magic. They have been a really good team. They are a young and upcoming team. They've been really good defensively. Jalen Suggs finally staying healthy. This is like the first real extended stint that we've gotten to see Jalen Suggs in his career, and it's clear that he's taken a step up. They have a lot of young guys that are making steps, like Franz and Paolo. They've been really good to start the year, and they're one of the top defensive units in the league. Anyways, let's get to the West. That's really the only surprise in the East. The East is pretty boring. Let's get to the West. The number one team in the West, as we all knew coming into the year after 20 games, would be the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's not true. Nobody thought that. However, the Timberwolves are 14-4, first in the West. They've been playing really well. Anthony Edwards is still awesome, but it's finally translating to wins. And I think a big part of that is the T-Wolves staying healthy. They have Cat healthy. They have Gobert healthy. Gobert is back to being a top center in the league, which is really big for them. And they finally have a depth unit. They guys like Mike Conley, Naz Reid, Shake Milton, Kyle Anderson, Jaden McDaniels. They've all been super good for this team, really good veteran leadership, and have really created a well-rounded group. And this group is the number one defensive team in the league. And that's the big change from this Timberwolves team to previous years Timberwolves team. And if they can keep that up, they can compete with anybody. However, at this point, I'm not ready to crown them as anything. I'm not ready to say they're going up and competing with the Nuggets or any of the big dogs in the West just yet. Just because I don't know if you remember from last year, we were having these same conversations. Believe it or not, I feel like everybody forgets this, but through about a quarter of the season, we were having these same conversations with the New Orleans Pelicans. They were first in the West. Zion was balling before he got hurt. They had BI, they had CJ McCollum. They looked like a really good team, and then they kind of fell flat due to injuries and a bunch of other stuff. So we'll see if this Timberwolves team can keep this up. I still need to see it for a little bit longer of a sample size for me to crown them, but they do look promising, and it's good to see them finally take a step forward because it's been a long time. Moving on from the T-Wolves, my other takeaway from the West is that super teams are super disappointing. And we can start with the Suns. They had a loss yesterday against the Denver Nuggets. So they are 11-8 to start the season. And the most frustrating point with the Suns is that we have seen 0 minutes and 0 seconds of Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Bradley Beal all on the court together. Even Devin Booker has missed a decent amount of time. Kevin Durant has missed a couple games. We just haven't seen them full strength yet, so it's really tough to evaluate them. But what I think we can evaluate that wouldn't really change based on if they're at full strength or not, is that currently they are a bottom 10 defense in the entire league. And I don't see that changing. Like when you add Grayson Allen, Jusuf Nurkic, Bradley Beal, who's only played like 2 or 3 games, you're not going to be a good defensive unit. They can obviously score with anybody, but the defense is going to be a big problem. And I don't really see that changing despite if they're healthy or not, because everybody they've been missing isn't really a all-world defender. So it's difficult to evaluate them. I think we still need to see the big three and how they operate together. But as of now, this team, they look like a mid seed in the West right now. They're playing like it. They're 11-8. But I think we really need to see them. I think that they at full strength they can just outscore people, kind of like what the Kings were doing last year. They just dared people to score more than them. So I think that let's see them full strength, and we'll move on from there. And moving on from the Suns, we can move on to the Clippers, who have also been incredibly disappointing so far this season. They are 8-10 to start. As we know, they have Paul George, they have Kawhi Leonard, they have Russell Westbrook, and they added James Harden early this season. And since adding James Harden, they are 5-8 with him. And they lost their first 5 games with James Harden, and it all kind of went to shit. And Russell Westbrook volunteered to come off of the bench. And since he came off the bench, they are 5-3. So maybe they're turning some things around. And James Harden, after a slow start with the Clippers, said to give him 10 games before we start throwing rocks from our glass houses. And it's now been 13. So I think it's fair to judge them. And the adding James Harden still makes no sense to me at all. It really doesn't. This team was balling out to start the year. Russell Westbrook was looking like a really good contributor, and now he's getting bench minutes. Kawhi and Paul George are both playing really well, and now it seems that they're both kind of taking turns at the expense of James Harden, which is frustrating because this past week and a half, Paul George has been horrible. He's very inefficient, and Kawhi Leonard has been awesome. And then the week and a half before that, it was opposite. Paul George was awesome, and Kawhi Leonard wasn't that great. And it's annoying to see a your turn, my turn kind of thing, because James Harden has the ball at all times, and he is quote unquote the system, as we know. And just in general, this Clippers team kind of pisses me off because we just don't really know what they are. This is like year 3 or 4 of saying, oh, what if they're healthy in the playoffs? Because we haven't really seen a healthy Clippers team that can compete for a championship, either because Paul George isn't playing or Kawhi Leonard isn't playing, or because of other reasons. And as a basketball fan, I just really want to know what this team is. I just really hope we can get one playoff stint with a healthy squad, so that if they lose in the second round, we can just write them off and say this didn't work and move on, and not have to wonder what the Clippers are. Or if they make the Western Conference Finals or even the finals or whatever happens, we can anoint them as contenders. But I just want to know. I don't want to play this guessing game and say what if forever, because right now it seems like that's the track we're on. and it's frustrating. It's frustrating. We'll move on to more surprises in the West. We'll move away from the super teams being super disappointing. I want to talk about some good in the West. I want to shout out OKC because they are young and they are really, really good. Right now, they are third in the Western Conference with a 12-6 record. And Chet looks like the missing piece that they needed. SGA is still they're doing his thing. They still have Dort, they still have Giddy, they still have both Williams. They have a lot of good pieces, but Chet looks like the piece they are missing. And right now, he is rookie of the year, and it's not close. Nothing against Wemby. It's between Chet and Wemby, but Chet is looking like a really, really polished player at such a young age. He looks really good. And I don't think this is a fluke. They are a top 3 seed in the West. I think that they can maintain that throughout the year. I really do. Um, they're young. There's going to be some growing pains, but I think that they can make some noise in the West, similar to how the Kings kind of made noise in the West last season. Nobody really expected the Kings to be a top 3 seed, and I think there was promise around OKC, but nobody really expected them to be doing what they're doing right now. And I think it's very impressive, and I think it's sustainable the way that they're playing basketball. They have really good depth and really good role players to go around SGA and Chet. And another takeaway I have from the Western Conference is this whole Luka and Kyrie thing. It might just work. It might just work. They are currently fourth in the West at 11-6. And I don't know if anybody remembers to last season, but this Luka and Kyrie pairing was a disaster. It was so bad. It was so bad. In games that both Luka and Kyrie played in, they're 16-18, and that includes this season. They're 11-6. That record includes this season. Like it was horrendous. There was no defensive. They traded like all their defensive pieces to go get Kyrie. They traded Finney Smith, who was a big contributor on the defensive end of the basketball for the Mavs last season, and it just all blew up in their face. And now they look like a totally different team. Derek Lively has been a really good addition as a rookie pick, and I don't want it to go unnoticed. Grant Williams has been a huge addition to this lineup. And you see the Celtics sweatshirt, there's no bias there whatsoever, but Grant Williams has been fantastic on this Mavericks team. He's been shooting the 3 at an incredibly high clip. For much of the season, he was over 50%. I don't know if that's still true. But his 3-point efficiency has been incredible, with about double the attempts that he was shooting in Boston. And he brings that defensive edge to that team, and you can see it on a night in and night out basis. That is the piece that they were missing all of last season. So Grant Williams added there, it hurts as a Celtics fan. It really does, but I'm glad to see him thriving there, and he's actually making a really big difference. And I do think this can work, because this Luka and Kyrie tandem, it's working so far this season, and I think they have the depth pieces to at least make the play-in tournament this season, man. They completely missed it last year. They were so bad after adding Kyrie. It was hurtful to watch. Anyways, those are my main takeaways from the Western Conference. That's my quick recap of what I saw in the early stages of this NBA season. I'm excited to see where we are going on later in the future. I want to do, now that the recap's out of the way, I want to do a couple deeper dives into 2 teams. And the first one's going to be a little bit ugly, because nobody really wants to even recognize that this is a franchise at this point. I want to talk about the Detroit Pistons. And the question I have leading off about the Detroit Pistons are they the worst team since the Charlotte Bobcats, the 2012 Bobcats? And I know, but Cade Cunningham is way better than Bismack Biyombo or Desanya Diop or rookie Kemba Walker or Boris Diaw, who didn't give a shit about basketball at the time. I get it. That Charlotte team had players their own mothers never even heard of them before. This This Pistons team is talented. I'm not denying that. But they are currently 2-17 on the year. They just went the entire month of November without winning a single basketball game. That's difficult to do. I don't know how that's even possible. They went an entire month without winning a single basketball game. And dating back to last season, they are 4-40. That's over half a season of sample size. 4-40. This team is really, really, really bad. And they are on a current streak of 4 straight seasons of 25 wins or less ever since Blake Griffin raised an 8th seed banner in the rafters out there in Detroit. It is ugly times in Detroit if you're a Pistons fan, man. And it's not like they haven't drafted good players, which is the annoying and frustrating part, because they have gotten some good young talent. Like this past year, they drafted Osar Thompson over fifth, or not over fifth. They drafted Osar Thompson fifth overall, who looks like a really promising prospect and a really nice player. And he stepped in really early in his young rookie year and has been a great contributor for this team. Last year, they drafted Jaden Ivey fifth overall, Jalen Duren at 13. Jaden Ivey's been in the doghouse a little bit this year, but he had a really promising rookie year. Jalen Duren's a high energy big. They had drafted the year before that, they drafted Cade Cunningham at 1. And looks like he's still on track to be a superstar in this league. The year before that, they drafted Killian Hayes 7th. Say what you want about Killian Hayes, but he's an NBA player. He's an NBA player. Not every top 10 pick is going to be a superstar. It took some time for him to get going, but he doesn't look like the worst player in the league, which is what some people were saying about him a couple years back. And then other young players on the team, they got Marcus Sasser, Isaiah Stewart, Marvin Bagley, James Wiseman, Isaiah Livers, Kevin Knox. Like this team is so young. And I think that's where their problem lies. I just named probably about 10 to 12 players, 10 to 12 players on their roster that are 25 or younger, under 25 years old. I don't care what players you have. Like it's hard to win basketball games without that kind of experience on your team. And I think that's where they've really messed up in this rebuild is the failure to add veteran leadership. They've added the only real veterans they've added is Bogdanovich and Joe Harris, and both of them are currently injured right now. And Bogdanovich is just at all times like circling in trade talks, which is pretty annoying because they do need that veteran leadership on their team because watching them, there's no discipline. They turn the ball over a bunch. They don't get to the free throw line, and it's just really bad basketball. It's frustrating. It's frustrating because they have good talent, but they just can't put it together. And they are young. They need time to figure it out. We have to remember that Cade pretty much missed all of last season due to a shin injury. So it's difficult to evaluate, but I don't see things getting better this season. It's going to take time. They're so young. They need to add veterans. And moving forward, we just need to see development out of Osar Thompson, out of Jaden Ivey, out of Sasser, out of Duren. And if you're a Pistons fan, you might be saying, where do I get hope with this team? Like, is it even worth watching games? Can I have a glimmer of hope when I tune into the Detroit Pistons? And the short answer to that is probably no. It's probably no. As a Pistons fan, you're probably sentenced to life eating Detroit style pizza and just being a fan of the Pistons forever. And I wouldn't wish either of those things upon my worst enemy. Speaking of the whole pizza thing, like the sauce on top, what are we doing, Detroit? What are we doing? Like, it's halfway to a lasagna, I feel like. And if I wanted a lasagna, I wouldn't have half a lasagna. I just go for the lasagna. I I, I think that might be where all of the Pistons struggles are coming from is their choice in pizza. I don't know how you can create a winning culture with that kind of pizza. I'm sorry, but they haven't been to a conference finals in like 16 years. I think it might be time to switch up the pizza style. Maybe try Chicago, go to New York, invent something new. It's worth a shot. Anything's better than 2-14 or 2-17 or whatever I said they were. Anyways, enough with the Pistons. That was really depressing to talk about. If you are not a Pistons fan, I don't encourage you to go watch the Pistons because it's not an inspiring watch at all. That is going back to the beginning of this segment. That is my hot take of the year, is that they will be the worst team of all time. They will. I think they're going to have I know the Bobcats 2012 season, their worst. That is the worst season ever due to winning percentage, and that's because it was a shortened lockout year. I genuinely believe, after watching 20 games of the Pistons, and I've watched more Pistons games than I care to admit. I'll be honest about that. Um, they will have a worse winning percentage at the end of the season than the Bobcats. I'm planting my flag now, even with a 20 game cheat sheet. I'm planting my flag on that. Anyways, let's move on. I digress. Let's move on. We're going to move on to a little bit of a brighter note. I'm going to talk about the Celtics, obviously, because if you haven't figured out by now, I am a Celtics fan. And I just want to say, as like compared to the Pistons and compared to a lot of franchises, I am absolutely spoiled. I'm so spoiled to be a Celtics fan. Like I was born in 1998, and I started following the Celtics in 2008, coincidentally, when they won the NBA championship. When I was 10 years old, I started watching the Celtics. The first year I really started getting into basketball and watching the Celtics. And I didn't even know that there was 15, 20 years, not 20 years, 15-ish years where the Celtics were just terrible. In 2008, I just thought that Ray Allen and Kevin Garnett were just forever Celtics. I had no idea that they were traded there. And I had no idea that the season before they won the championship, the Celtics won like 22 games. So I'm very spoiled that I walked into a team that won a championship and has been competitive for pretty much my entire life and completed probably the fastest rebuild I've ever seen after selling off Pierce and KG and Rondo. It took like a year and a half. It was insane. But with that said, like, I know it sounds like champagne problems. With that said, the Celtics are probably the biggest dick tease of a team in the entire NBA. All they do is lose in the conference finals. It is incredibly frustrating. We've lost in the conference finals last season. We lost in the bubble in the conference finals to the Heat again. We lost in the conference finals a couple times to the Cavs. We lost in the conference finals again to LeBron Heat. It's frustrating. We always get to the top of the mountain, and then we come crashing down and tumble down to the bottom. It's so frustrating, especially that 2018 year. That 2018 year, that was one of the greatest playoff runs by LeBron James I've ever seen. I'm not denying that. But in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals against the Cleveland Cavaliers at home, not only in 2018 did the Celtics blow a 3-2 lead in that series, but in Game 7, it's a rock fight. It's a defensive war in that game. But 6 minutes left in the game, Jason Tatum dunks on LeBron, and they get a stop. And then the very next possession, Jason Tatum hits a 3 to take the lead by 1. Then the rest of the game, he never touches the ball. I still lose sleep over that. I do. And as much as I love Brad Stevens, I think that's ultimately what it comes down to. I just don't know how you don't get a rookie Jason Tatum the ball when he is cooking at the end of the game. It's still the biggest what ifs in my mind. And don't hear what I'm not saying. I love Brad Stevens. I even voted for him for president. That is real, by the way. I did vote for him. I thought he had a chance. Anyways, let's talk about the Celtics. I'm hoping the Celtics can get over the hump and finally bring a title back to Boston after 15 years. Yeah, it's going to be 15 years since they won the championship. Incredible. But anyways, they are 14-4 to start this year. They are tied with the T-Wolves for best record in the league. They are off to a great start. Or actually 15-4. I apologize. They beat the Sixers last night in a close game where they didn't have Embiid or Maxey, but we'll talk about that another time. But best record in the league, 15-4. Tatum's playing like an MVP. I don't know if he'll get it, but he is taking a clear jump this season, playing like at an MVP level. And the additions of Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis are absolutely perfect for this team. I mentioned earlier that losing Grant Williams is difficult. It was difficult. And losing Marcus Smart is difficult. And it's sad to see a guy who embodied the Boston Celtics and bled green every single night leave, and he was the longest tenured Celtics. Losing Marcus Smart was a very, very sad day for Celtics fans. No denying that. But if you want a player that plays with heart, is a very good perimeter defender, an amazing locker room guy, is going to come in every single night and do his job, look no further than Jrue Holiday. That he is the epitome of a great teammate and a great NBA player. And watching him this season, like his stats don't jump off the page, and they never will. Be playing alongside Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kristaps Porzingis, he will never be the guy that will averages 22, 23 a game like he was in Milwaukee. But watching his energy on defense, it is contagious. And if Marcus Smart is the best perimeter defender in the league, Jrue Holiday might as well be too. And then Derek White is probably 3 right next to him. The Celtics defensive backcourt is absolutely insane. It is incredible to watch the defensive energy between those two. And then adding Kristaps Porzingis is exactly what the Celtics needed. It allows another big that stretches the floor. No, and that is what Grant was able to do. But Grant was not a rim protector whatsoever. It allows pressure to be taken off of Al Horford, where we can still have defensive presence down low. Kristaps is blocking shots like crazy this year and can stretch the floor out well beyond the 3-point line. So these two puzzle pieces that fit in with the Celtics are absolutely perfect. And the Celtics, no homer take at all. The Celtics are the team to beat in the East. They are the team to beat in the entire league. And another underrated point about the Celtics and how well they're playing is the Celtics bench. After they made all their trades to get Jrue Holiday and Kristaps Porzingis, all the narratives were the Celtics have no bench, but the Celtics bench has been really, really good with Horford coming off the bench, taking a reduced role. He's been incredible doing his thing. Pritchard has finally got his shot going again. Even when it wasn't falling early in the year, he was still very energetic, and I've never seen the smallest guy in the court get so many offensive rebounds. It's amazing, and his energy is also contagious. Even though he's undersized, it's good to see that he tries, and now that his shot is falling a little bit more, he's a spark plug off the bench. And when talking about the Celtics bench, you can't talk about Sam Hauser, and he is having a real breakout year. He leads the league. Not as of like a week and a half ago, he led the league in 3-point percentage. He was shooting well over 50% from 3. It's everything just goes in. I feel like if he's open and the Celtics pass him the ball, he shouldn't even have to shoot. Just put up 3 points, because he does not miss from 3. He is having an incredible year as a spot up shooter, and as low key everybody ISOs him on defense, but he holds his own. It's not a good idea, even though he's the lanky white guy on the floor. And people target him, but it's not a good idea. He's been really good as a one-on-one defender. I said I wasn't going to bring up metrics, so I won't. But his defensive plus minus is actually really, really good. But that's not what we're here to talk about. Anyways, I think that'll do it for the first episode of the High Post. If for whatever reason you stuck around for the entire show, I appreciate it. This is my first episode. There's going to be growing pains, and I'll figure this thing out. I'll figure out where exactly this podcast is going, but give me some time, give me some patience, and I think that I'll get a lot better at this, and we'll figure it out from here. So I appreciate it if you watched it the whole way through, and I'll see you next time. I don't know about an uploading schedule or how often I'm going to do this, but I do hope to do this more in the future and just get my thoughts out about the NBA and just have some dialogue. So I appreciate it. Thank you for watching.